Well, today on Racing Legends podcast, I have my good friend Forest Boyce, a rider who has, in the last 12, 13 years, her mounts have earned over $31 million. Forrest, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So right now you're at Colonial Downs and New Kent, Virginia. Um,
hmm
is life kind of hectic this time of year? Because generally you ride in Maryland and you ride on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sometimes Thursday, and then obviously you get up in the morning and work out horses. But does this make your life hectic? Because now you're riding races 6 days a week.
Yeah, I actually like it. I like to be busy, so it kind of works out well for me. The other day, I was down here on a Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I didn't have any rides on the Tuesday, and so I spent the day golfing, and then I convinced them to let me handicap a couple races because I'm not very good at sitting still. So I actually thrive when it's like this.
Well, as a follower of yours on social media, you do have a lot of fun on your off days.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I spend a lot of time with my nephew.
Yeah. So you live down there for the month of August when you're riding at Colonial.
No, so we travel back and forth. We just stay here Monday and Tuesday nights. And
Does it get a little crazy because your horses could be between three or four different tracks? I mean, obviously you're going to have your horses in at Maryland, and then I guess you can be riding in Delaware, or because there's not much overlap with Colonial and Laurel, it works out pretty well.
yeah, this year, because they did separate racing days, it's worked out very well. You aren't having to pick and choose as much. So we're pretty much just sticking with Colonial and Laurel. And then if it like something super important goes somewhere else, then we'll travel. Uh, in the past, when they overlapped, it was really difficult because you kind of had to pick and choose who you were going to keep, which trainers you were going to keep happy, and that gets tough.
I know it does get frustrating. Like in the old days, you could just spin me like you used to always do and ride someone else.
Oh, okay. Easy there.
uh, so when you ride a Colonial, it's a very different track layout than we're accustomed to. I guess it's probably closest to Belmont Park. It's huge, very vast turns, and the turf course they have different lanes. You'll have an inside turf and outside turf. Is it different to ride the surface at Colonial Downs?
Well, yeah, so the dirt is very different because you're right, it's huge, it's massive. It's been very speed favoring this meet, which is a little frustrating if you have a horse that sits just even a couple lengths, like to sit a couple lengths off of it. It's hard to make up that ground. Um, and then on the turf, it's a very different type of grass. I think it's like the Bermuda. It's the one that kind of like knits itself like a mat. So the grass here is very different than the grass that you find at Laurel and Delaware. And so it makes it, some horses love this turf course and they don't necessarily like a more true turf course like Laurel or Delaware.
Is the
Like
grass
you'll see a lot of dirt horses that'll run all right on this turf course, but they might not in Maryland or
right?
whatever else.
Yeah, and so I guess from a handicapper's point of view, or from your point of view, when you're choosing mounts, it might be a horse for course type thing, where horses really move up or move down on the Colonial surface.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One thing I've noticed on the turf course as well is that you have to be a little more patient on making your moves sometimes. You would think when you had vast turns that you'd be able to move early because the turns aren't banked or anything. They're so wide. But it seems like you really have to be patient and kind of wait inside sometimes. Or I mean, and if you get the lead, obviously you're going to save ground. That could be an advantage too. But it seems like these wide moves on Colonial don't necessarily work too well.
Um, there's times when you need to do it though. Yesterday I had to do it with a horse because I could tell if she got stopped at all, she wasn't going to get restarted.
Mhm.
Um, and she actually ran the best race of her life. I think she was second or third. But yeah, it's tricky. I, Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think it's pretty fair whether you go inside or out. I mean, you can't be losing ground the whole race, but um, if you need to in order to make a move to win, I think if you have enough force, you'll get there.
Do you prefer these turf courses to the ones in Maryland, or you have no preference? Just depends on the horse.
I personally like a true turf course, like what Pimlico used to be before they redid it, where it kind of undulated.
Mhm.
Because then a true turf horse ran really well over. It kind of separated out the real ones from the ones that, you know, just kind of, there's certain horses that I don't think are true turf horses, but people make them into turf because they're maybe just a little bit better on it than they are the dirt or whatever. Whereas Pimlico really sorted those horses out back in the day.
And also, sometimes the course is so hard that it doesn't even play like a grass course anymore. Not Pimlico. I'm talking about generally. I mean, I remember Laurel at some points of the year, the grass would get so hard. It seemed like horses that necessarily didn't like turf would be okay on that surface.
Well, see, you're exactly right. So it's not necessarily that it gets so hard. It's like, oh yeah, they do need to be firm for like the dirt horses to run well over them, but they're so smooth. Like there's nothing. That's why like a lot of dirt horses will kind of run well down here. Is there's no undulation, and so there's nothing to separate it really from the dirt.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's go back. Let's go back to how you got started in racing. I remember reading an article about you when you first got into racing that you were, I think you were in art school in Baltimore or something like that. And
Yeah.
so how did you get involved in the racing game? And did you come from a racing family?
Well, my dad galloped. Yeah, I kind of did. His side of the family, like my grandfather trained horses. My Uncle Tim, he was an agent, a trainer. He had worked for Fazzy Tipton for years, went down to Texas and headed up that down there.
Is he Tim? Is that Tim Boyce? Same last
Yes.
name? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Uncle Tim, yeah, he's the best. And then my dad galloped in order to put himself through college. And so my father's an accountant. So that's as
Oh,
horsey as we got as far as racehorses go.
yeah.
But growing up, I had always been interested in it. As a little kid, you watch like the Derby and stuff, and it's always been, kind of a big deal, and it's something I always wanted to do. And so when I was 11, I think I went and worked for a man named Mikey Smithick,
Yeah.
and he was like really known for his both flat and jump horses, but he fixed a lot of difficult horses and stuff. And so I started with him, then I made my way to Dickie, and Dickie Small was the one who was like, you absolutely have to go to college. And so
Right.
that's how I wound up at Micah, was because of Dickie.
Oh wow. So you would have
Um,
gotten into racing before college if not for Dick Small?
yeah, Dickie and my parents, they all insisted that I had to get a college degree. And so I actually started out at University of North Carolina, Asheville.
Oh, wow.
And uh, that didn't go so well. I partied too much down there. And so
Really? God, I can't imagine that.
never. And so I came back north after a couple of years of doing that. And Dickie was like, yeah, go, you're good at art, go to Micah. And so that's what we decided on, and I managed to graduate, so that was good.
Do you have real passion and for your art? I know, it's interesting for us because you have Instagram site Pete's Pickings, and I believe we can get into this later, but you inherited your
Yeah.
grandmother's antique store, and you have such good taste. Like when you set your photos up or the way you outfit your store, you have a mind for it. Do you have talent for art, or is this just something that you use to get a degree?
Yeah, no, it was something I was somewhat good at. My grandmother, my father's mother, Nancy, was Nancy Boyce, and she used to do the cartoons for the Maryland Horse.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she was actually a very good artist. And so that whole side of the family, there were several artists. I was actually named after an artist, I believe, on that side of the family.
Oh.
And they thought Forest was the artist name, but that's just how they sign their work. It was just a pen name. So I have like a fake family name.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so yeah, so I'm all right. I just haven't. It's one of those things you have to do it all the time to be good at it, and I don't do it enough anymore to be good at it.
Yeah. So you finished art school. Did you ever consider getting a job at art gallery or, whatever you could do with that? Or did you always have your mind around getting back into the racing game?
This is always the goal. So while I was going to art school, I was always getting on horses. I'd go and get on horses for Dickie in the morning and then go to school. Um, so this was always the goal. And having watched several, because Dickie, that was his big thing. He helped a lot of riders get started. And I watched a lot go through, and I told myself, if I can't make it happen within a year, then I'm going to have to grow up and get a real job.
Yeah.
And the first 6 months, as you remember, I mean, I couldn't buy a mount. And then I came down to Colonial after 6 months of riding and took off. And so I guess the rest is history. Here we are 12, 13 years later.
Yeah. Well, what's it like to be an apprentice now? You get a weight break, so there's an advantage. Maryland is very hospitable to apprentice riders generally, historically.
Mhm.
And what's that? What is that like? Do people get out of your way? Did you enjoy that part of your career when you're an apprentice rider?
It was good. And, it was good and bad to everything. There's, a steep learning curve. Um, I was very fortunate to ride with good riders who were very tough on me. And because of that, they made me a much better rider. Um, when I was an apprentice, I was there were times I was galloping for Gary in the morning, and then I'd have to ride a race down here. So then I'd drive down after galloping, drive to Colonial, ride my race, then drive back and spend the night in my car. It was a tough time, but
Yeah.
so then when the horses started to win, it got a lot better. But
Who are your first role models? Who'd you want to ride like? You were saying that a lot of riders were helpful to you. Who'd you kind of model your riding after?
I guess the three riders that have really continuously helped me throughout the years would be Vincent Bracciale.
Hmm.
I mean, he's number one. He's always torturing me if I do something wrong, which I appreciate. He holds me accountable.
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
him, Mario Pino, not Mario Pino, Mario Verge, who works in the office. He's always been the same thing. The minute I do something wrong, he lets me know. He calls me up. He's like, Forrest, what are you doing?
He's such
Which
a
I
great.
appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's such a good guy.
Yeah.
And then Edgar Prado has helped me out a lot over the years as well,
Yeah.
which has been nice. So they're all class acts. They're all very good riders.
Yeah.
All three of them.
Yeah. So when I look at those riders, I wouldn't. Your style is not so much like them. Who would you equate your riding style to, if anybody? Maybe you just have your own
I
style.
don't. I don't know if. Yeah, I think I don't know. Who do you think I ride like?
Yeah, let me think about it. I'll think about it during this interview. I should know. I should know that. Maybe Andrea, but that's generalizing too much. Just because both successful women. So when you riders are huge personalities, they're very much like boxers, and you have a lot of cultural things going on. You have a huge Latino population, and not just Latino. You have the Puerto Rican jockeys. You have jockeys from other parts of the Latino world. It's a very male-dominated sport, and that doesn't even include the trainers and everybody else that you're dealing with. So, what is it like to be a woman rider in a sport completely dominated generally by big personalities and big egos?
It's never really been an issue for me. I think having watched a lot of women go through, I think I learned from other people's mistakes. I've never dated people in the room. Um, I don't really date people around the track. Um, and I don't know. I think, like I said in the beginning, it took a while, like of those, Kendrick and Pimentel and Caramanos all schooling me.
Mhm.
Um, you know, they kind of tortured me a little bit, which was good because it made me the rider I am, and it taught me a lot. And so I think I now have the respect of all of them, and you know, we all get along. I've never really had any problems
Yeah, I
with
mean,
them.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead, finish.
Yeah, no, go ahead. No,
Oh,
I
okay.
was finished.
Well, a couple weeks ago, I was watching the ride, and you kept somebody in, and they were rallying, and your horse was rallying too, and you're able to keep them behind horses. And I think they eventually passed you, but they didn't win. And the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, you know, those jockeys would probably have words, but you've never been the kind of jockey that has a reputation of getting into those arguments, whatever. But I know how jockeys are, but it did cross my mind that you kept someone in. It was maybe a week and a half ago. You did a great job of it, and you gave your horse every chance to win, and he didn't win. But you know you didn't know that at the time. You're trying to win the race. So when
Yeah.
those things happen, does a guy jockey talk to you the way he talked to another guy? Like if that was, you know, the X-Man, and he might be talking to, let's say, you know, Christian Omo, his friend. Well, they may have words because you know they're both guys and they may talk to each other. Would they talk to you the same way they would talk to each other?
Oh yeah. I've had them come for me at times.
Is that right?
Like I said, I'm very fortunate. And nowadays it doesn't so much happen at home. It happens more away.
Mhm.
And fortunately, often some of our guys from here um are riding wherever I am. The last time it happened was up at Delaware Park, and luckily a good friend of mine, Victor Carrasco, and I think maybe Toledo, they both stepped in and backed me up.
Well, yeah.
So I, you know, like I said, it's important to have everyone's respect. And I don't I if someone does something to me in a race, I tend not to get mad. I just get even.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
you know, like I just don't say anything. I just keep my mouth shut. And then when the opportunity arises, you know, I'll get even.
Yeah. Do you ever get off a horse and you're like, oh, I need to manage that relationship? Something happened in a race that you know you're going to hear about. And are you ever proactive and go talk to the person first and say, look, I know.
Oh yeah, like if I like do something where um I needed help, or I accidentally, or my horse is lugging in and I put someone in a bad spot and it wasn't intentional, if it wasn't intentional, I always come in. I'm like, hey, sorry, you know, I was doing my best. My horse wasn't cooperating, and they can often tell when that is. But yes, I do. I'm not a bully. Like I do try to be considerate because, like, I don't want to put anyone in a bad spot. Like, I want everybody to make it around there safe. However, like you said the other week, you saw me keep someone in. It's not my job to let you out. And if I have horse, I'm gonna keep you in because I'm trying to win the race. Now, if I don't have any horse, you're more than welcome to go wherever you want. You
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Well, yeah. Well, as you know, I've ridden female jockeys, yourself, Laura Lee. I think it was
Hmm.
Katie Cruz, I think in Charlestown, or
Yeah,
um,
you did.
yeah. So I've always you know given female riders a chance, and it's just so funny because whenever my horse would lose with a female rider, you know, my friends would give me, you know, unsolicited advice. And it was always this. And I know you've heard this before. So let's say a female rider does everything right, breaks a horse sharp, gets it in perfect position, does everything right, maybe even draft behind horses, tip out, everything's perfect, loses at the wire. It's always that, oh, they weren't strong enough. They lost at the wire. So therefore they lost because they weren't strong enough. It always happens. And I used to always say, well, what about the rest of the race? I mean, everything was perfect and we lost, and all you talk about is what happened the last like 10 jumps before the wire. Do you ever have that situation where you feel as a female rider, you have to overcome a presumption that it's all about strength?
Uh, if you're riding me, you're not looking for someone that's just gonna go and beat up your horse and send it off its feet. And I, you know, so I don't think I have to deal with that as much. I've definitely have heard people say things like that about me, but I've also come back and I've beaten plenty of people on the wire,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like where we've hooked up at the eighth hole or the 316th, and we've had to battle it out. And so, I don't agree with those things. I think it's more about being in rhythm with the horse, um, than anything else, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because
Why?
you watch some of these guys ride that everyone's like, oh, he's so strong, he's so strong. But if you really watch him, he's overriding and he's actually throwing the horse off rhythm. So, like, I don't know. I have a very different mindset, I think, than most people about it.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't make that point the way I wanted to make it. I guess what I want to say is if you win the stretch drive, I don't hear anything about it. If you happen to lose the stretch drive, it's only because you weren't strong enough. And I it's always been like, well, it's only bring it out in certain circumstances, and it's always when I get beat by a nose. Never when me and you've won. I remember on max speed one time, you split horses late deep stretch, got up, you won like a 4-horse photo. You won 2 3-horse photos of max speed, and she wasn't a
Uh-huh.
great finish. She was a really big horse. And,
Yeah.
no one says at that point, oh, yeah, she won it because she was a woman. It's always, anyway.
Oh no, you're right. Like it will get blamed, but I guess I just don't really give that any thought, like, because it's just silly.
Exactly. So over your career, you were a very hot apprentice rider, and you've had a great journeyman career. At one point in your career, you went down to the fairgrounds to ride, and
Hmm.
fairgrounds is a one of the winter destinations, and it's a very interesting track because it's got an extremely long stretch, maybe the longest stretch in racing. I'm not sure, but it's definitely a different configuration. What was that experience like riding the fairgrounds?
It was really good. It was good to ride with a completely different group of riders.
Mhm.
Because here on the East Coast, like you'll ride with the guys from New York and the guys from Florida, and you know, uh, so the East Coast riders are very different than the Midwest riders. I learned a lot. Like I'm glad I went. I
Mhm.
learned a lot from riding with those guys because they ride pretty tight down there. Um, it was fun. It was very educational.
And was the jockstrom dynamic different than it is here?
Oh yeah, they have some good cooks down there. It smells good down there. Like you walk in that Jackson, it smells so good. They're always cooking something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you were known as a turf rider, and I have kept statistics and kind of I have a system of evaluating jockeys, and it was always interesting to me because by the data, there was nothing about your riding that made you any different on turf than you are on dirt. But you have this reputation as a grass rider, and I think it's because you save ground and tactically you're very astute. So which tactics tend to meet a little bit more on turf, unless at least that's the reputation. Do you agree with that? That's your reputation. Have you felt it? Has it ever worked against you being known as a turf rider?
Oh, it kills me. I was pigeonholed pretty early on as a turf rider, which is so weird because early on I won all those dirt races and a lot for like a ton of stakes for Dickie and it was all in the dirt and Dickie didn't like to run a horse on the grass unless it forced him to.
Yeah.
So it's like really weird that I got pigeon, because he was my big supporter that I would get pigeonholed as a turf rider. But yeah, I guess the difference is on the turf, it's not the best horse that wins, it's the best trip that wins.
Yeah.
And I think, I do ride a fairly smart race that does help me on the grass. So it's good and bad. It's bad because in the winter time I go really quiet,
Mhm.
but you know.
I think I once introduced you to a friend of mine, probably maybe in the paddock or maybe outside the paddock, but I described you as a great turf rider. And I saw the look on your eyes, and I was like, well, that was a compliment. But I knew when I said it that you looked at it in a different way. And that was the first time. That was the first time that I knew that could work against you because I saw it in your
Oh
eyes.
yeah.
I saw it in your eyes.
Like it uh Virgil has the same problem as well. He always gets labeled. He and I joke about it, and he's taken so now in the winters, he just takes the winter off because it's such a fight to get decent rides on the dirt. Um, So yeah, like I said, there's good and bad to it. It's great, spring, summer, fall, but
Yeah. So what's your preparation before a race? Now, to me, you were always very well prepared. You kind of knew what was going on in the race. You were never somebody that needed a lot of instruction. You knew what was going on. Sometimes I would open my big mouth, and I probably shouldn't have, but I always felt like you knew exactly you knew exactly what needed to be done, and you did it. But generally, what is your preparation? What do you do with the tactics that might not be the best? From what you know about the horse in the race, and give me your before as you warm a horse up and going into the gate.
I handicap the races like everyone else does, and I watch a couple replays to try to get an idea of the horse, and then I base my warm up and how I ride the race off of all that. Yeah, I don't know. I know that's very vague. It's really like horse to horse. It's they're individuals. So.
Yeah. What do you do in a warm up? Do you believe in a brisk warm up, or do you just depends on the horse, or how do you handle
it
that?
depends on the horse.
Yeah.
Like what I'm trying to get out of the horse for that race, whether they're sprinting or going long, or if they're switching distances, or
What do you like to see in the horse's behavior and the way the horse looks?
that's also depending on what distance we're going and everything.
Is that
But
right?
I have a firm belief, like I like a classy horse. I like one that doesn't get real upset. But then I've ridden plenty of good horses that do get real upset. So unfortunately there is no sure thing in any of it, right?
Yeah. It's
I
awesome.
mean, it's crazy because like some of the best sprinters I've been on have been absolutely huge, and they look like they should go 3 miles over timber.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a weird thing.
So you really don't overthink those kind of things. You just kind of accept it, and horses get on
Yeah,
its path.
I just try to, the best thing is to watch a replay or to kind of get an idea of what they're up to, and make the best of it from there.
So, what about agents? You've been with Shug, Jay Burtis for a long time. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what do you look? What makes a good agent? What do you look for in an agent, and why have you and Shug lasted so long? Because recently we've heard the story of Jose Ortiz leaving his agent to go into our friend Steve Rushing. But why have you guys lasted so long, and what makes a good agent?
Jay and I get along well. He likes to similar things. I don't know, like he's become one of my best friends, which is a little funny. Yeah, I guess personality wise, he and I get along. We're both very accepting of the other one messing up, but we can still be hard on each other. It's just like any long term friendship or any sort of long term relationship, there's ups and downs. I struggle with these guys that jump around from agent to agent to agent. I don't understand that. It's like you're always trying to blame someone else rather than take responsibility. I don't know. And Jay's been very loyal, which I appreciate. So yeah, I mean, it just kind of works for us. Could I go somewhere else and maybe business would be different? Yeah. But I feel like a lot of the business I have is the business that I would have no matter who my agent was. And Jay and I get along, and he's loyal, and it just, I don't know, it works.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, the way you describe it, it makes the rider feel like, well, I already have my business. I don't need him, the way you just described it. And I think to your credit, you do see his value, and it's good that you've been able to, maintain that relationship.
Oh yeah, like I very much need him. Like he does a lot. It's hard to keep all these trainers happy, and yeah, like my business is my business, I think. He's definitely helped me out. Like there's a couple people I ride for that are definitely because he's good friends with them.
Mm-hmm.
which has been great because like those people definitely like help me in the winter and stuff. Uh but yeah, I guess like the most important thing is that like he keeps everyone happy and he's loyal. And not a lot of these like jockeys and agents, like they constantly, you watch them constantly turning on each other. And I don't know, I wouldn't want to be in that situation.
Yeah. Well, how about trainers? Well, to me, one of your strengths is that you're very insightful after a race, but it can be very delicate because you're getting off a horse. You may not have felt too good. You don't want to, but you don't want to offend. The owner might be around. What about relationships with trainers? Is that something that you think much about?
Oh, absolutely. Like my agent always jokes with everyone. She's true. He's like, don't ask Boris her opinion if you don't want her truth. And
Mhm.
he is absolutely correct. If someone, if the horse isn't right, I'm gonna let you know it's not right. You're not paying me to manage your emotions. You're paying me to do a job and to give you my feedback, and that's what I try to do.
Right. Um, well, for being in the racing game, and you do maintain space between yourself and other riders. You try to, you were talking about earlier, you want to have your relationships outside the racetrack world, but the rest of the world doesn't understand the racetrack. I know it myself because I very rarely talk about horse racing with people that are in the world. They don't understand it, and so I don't even get
Mm-hmm.
into it. How do you deal with it?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you have very diverse interests. You have all different types of friends. How do you deal with the fact that most of the world doesn't understand what you do, even though you're very successful at it?
Yeah, so yeah, that makes like dating very difficult. But I'm fortunate that I have several friends who are out in like the corporate world who also grew up riding or whatever, um, who, yeah, they might not fully understand it, but they understand the horse world. And so, you know, we're able to hang out and it works.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your antique business? I know, little unfortunate that some COVID kind of interrupted a little bit of that. But tell us about your store, how you got it, and what you guys do.
Oh yeah, so my grandmother had an antiques shop, and when she passed away, my mother and I took it over. And so it's attached to my mother's hardware business.
Hmm.
And so we've just tried to carry it on. It's not been easy with COVID and everything. We do one big show a year now, the Garden Festival at Ladue, which has been very successful each year that we do it. Um, so yeah, we're just basically buying and reselling antiques. And so it's fun to see what like people we go on a few house calls and stuff and you see what people collect over the years, which is really interesting. It can get really weird sometimes.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Um,
So where's your store?
it's in Kingsville, Maryland, which is
Oh,
near Bel Air. It's Pete's Pickins Antiques.
yeah. So are you looking forward to focusing on that when you retire from riding?
Yeah, no, we definitely want to keep doing it. It's something we enjoy doing together, my mother and I. And yeah, it's just, it would be weird to not be doing it. So,
Do
yeah.
you, do you see yourself, after you finish riding, going full blown into the antique business, or could you see yourself training horses, being an agent, or and somehow staying in the racing game?
I have no idea what I would do as far, I don't think I have any, I've never had a desire to train or be an agent, maybe work in some other aspect of it. Um, I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah.
See
Well, I'm
where
not.
things go. I'm always open to trying new things, so who knows what I'll do afterwards.
Well, I'm certainly not trying to rush you. I love what you do.
don't don't try to retire me yet, please.
Exactly. Oh, you're still young, so. Um, but anyway, Forrest, this has been great. I've been trying to get you to do this for a very long time. I'm so glad you decided to do it. In this game, you have a game where when a jockey wins a race, the agent takes credit. The agent will take credit, the jockey will take credit. When a trainer wins, He'll take credit, doesn't even think about the jockey. But the jockey sees it, the jockey sees it the other way. It's just because of me. The trainer's not being very thankful. Owners is the same way. When I win races, I feel like, well, I put her on a whole bunch of horses. And the jockey sees it, well, I won a lot of races for that owner. And racing's a funny game because everyone thinks they're doing things for other people, but they don't see what the other people do for them. I want you to know you rode terrific for me as an owner. I mean, Day Strike, Lady Outflanker, Max Speed. You won a lot of races for me with those horses. You did such a great job, and it was always fun doing business with you. So I want you to know I appreciate you, and I think you're a great rider. And I just wish you continued success, and I really enjoy watching what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You're going to have to get me another dirt horse there, Julian.
Exactly. I got to keep you busy during the winter.
Yes.
Yeah. But if not, I got to get Mark and Damon to get you on some horses. And I keep telling Mark, I mean, all she's doing is winning. That's not good enough for you. But
it's not. So you need to buy one.
Exactly.
Back in that claiming box.
Exactly. So you can spin me again for old time's sake.
No, I will not spin you.
I'll never forget our friend Day Strike. When we won right off the bat with him, and then I remember one day you said to me the horse has got no heart or something, right? I don't know what you were saying. You said the horse has got no heart, and he did have a tricky personality. I agree. Well, then about 4 or 5 mounts later, you want to ride the horse because he's got so much heart. And that was just force. You just told me 3 or 4 races ago, this horse doesn't have any heart. And now he has.
I don't think I ever told you he had heart. I agree. I did tell you he had no heart.
You did.
But
yeah,
he wasn't much of a trier. I wanted to ride him because he looked like he could win.
Exactly. I thought you were going to say you were trying to win me some money.
But yes, you need to get back in the claim box, Julie.
Yeah, get back in the game. Just to make your
just so I can have something to ride in the winter.
Exactly. So no, okay. Well, I definitely will, and I definitely know you're going to have a great winter this year because you're riding as good as ever. So anyway, continued success, and thanks again for doing this.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, Forrest. Thanks again.
All right, sounds good. Bye.
Bye-bye.